Whakataka te au ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Ki mā kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. E he aki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei mauri ora. Morena everyone and welcome to our Planning, Environment and Parks Committee. Hope everyone is doing fine. Great to see Sandra back. And great to see we've got a pretty full table in the room. We have some people online. We'll just go straight to the apologies. Councillor Darby and we've got two. So Mayor Wayne Brown and Councillor Darby are on the same council business. You'll be leaving early and hopefully coming back. Coming
back online, yep.
Cool. And then we've got lateness from Councillor Fully. And that's on council business. And Councillor Lee, he is on his way.
Can I check what time you expect this will finish? Because we've got to leave here. Sharon Stewart and I need to leave for council about 3 or 3:30.
I think that is up to all of us to do that. That'll be the aim to finish before then, but I'm not going to jinx it by.
Let's say 12 o'clock, eh?
Yeah.
Let's shoot for the start.
Yeah. So that is with.
Apologies for leaving early at 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it won't have to be triggered if it doesn't happen.
Right, thank you. So we've got that apology for early departure, but it's in our power to all be done before that. Can I have a mover for the apologies? Yep. Councillor Henderson, seconder. Deputy Mayor Simpson. All those in favour? Any opposed? No. We've got declaration of interest. Have we got any declarations? Member Ashby?
Yes, it's not a conflict, but just declaring that on item 8, the iwi I work for, Te Kaurau Amaki, are an adjacent landowner, so it's just context.
Cool, and thank you for that. I think we don't perceive you have a conflict, but thank you for identifying that, and we'll have that recorded. Thank you.
Chair.
Oh, yes, sorry. Is that Councillor Filipina?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Chair. I've got a conflict of interest with the funding for the Auckland Disability Law, as they are housed in the Mangere Community Law Centre, and I chair the Board of Trustees at the Community Law, so I will be declaring a conflict for that particular one. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. And we will just make sure on that item we note that you did not vote on that particular applicant. Is that fine? Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right, we don't need to move that, do we? Declarations? No. Confirmation of the minutes from our last meeting. Deputy Chair Dalton, seconder, Deputy Mayor Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. There are no petitions. Now we move to public input. Right, we have a big agenda today, and it's my intention to do our best to keep this as structured as possible. After items are presented, we really need to do our best to stick to questions during the question time, and then when we move to debate and the officers move away from the table, then we can debate. There has been a lot of doing both and both, and I think we just need to separate them so it's clear and the meeting moves forward properly. So I will be hopefully not having to use chair standing orders throughout that process, but if we can try and do questions and comments quite separately, thank you. We also have quite a lot of public input, so I'll be trying to keep to 2 questions per presenter with that as well. Thank you. Right, we go straight to West Auckland is flooding. Do we have Lyle and Morgan? Kia ora. Just come to the table. You've got 5 minutes and then time for some questions. If you just want to, your microphones are in front of you. If you just want to move those mics a bit closer to you, sometimes it can be easier to hear. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Kia ora. Morena and good morning. My name's Lyle Carter and this is Morgan Allen, and I'm the chair of WAIF, West Auckland is Flooding. WAIF is an independent residents group which was formed in the aftermath of the anniversary weekend floods to advocate for urgent, fair and sustainable solutions to flood risk. Our committee is made up of people whose homes and properties were inundated with floodwaters. We have 250 people on our supporters list and thousands of people who engage with us daily across our social media platforms. In the Swanson and Opanuku stream catchments, we estimate 263 homes were flooded with significant amounts of water, sometimes as much as a metre, inside the houses. The flooding was concentrated in 9 clusters, all of them neighbourhoods built close to streams. Perhaps a quarter of those homes have experienced repeat flooding. For some, it has happened several times in the last few years. Quite a few of our members were wiped out by the storm of August 2021, spent the next year and a half recovering and rebuilding, only to be hit again, this time much worse, on January 27th. The trauma of the flood itself, many seeing loved ones in extreme danger from the waters or being at severe risk themselves, to the devastation of losing your home, priceless family mementos and other precious possessions lost, the financial pressure for many people of having to pay rent while also paying the mortgage, and then the uncertainty of waiting for government and for council response continues to take a terrible toll on the mental and emotional health of our people. And every time that the rain clouds roll in across the Waitakere Ranges, as they have done this morning, the anxiety begins to build in the hearts and minds of many a flood-affected Westie. Our main request to you today is for the Council to work closely with the government, banks and insurance companies, and to ensure that there is a systematic program of public support for flood-affected communities. This will not only help to reduce the ongoing flood risk, but will help our people feel safe and secure in their homes. This needs to happen urgently, not only because of the severe financial pressure and psychological pressure our people are under, but because 3 months have passed since the anniversary weekend floods and none of the risk factors have been dealt with. The risk of repeat flooding events is forever hanging over our heads. Our own independent research indicates in each case, different combinations of factors were responsible for the flooding. There needs to be a systematic series of interventions to reduce risk. We need infrastructure improvements. Donbuck Bridge, for example, has insufficient flow capacity under it. This led to the severe flooding in 3 neighbourhoods. We need streams, which aren't just a natural part of our environment anymore, but act as urban stormwater in many instances, to be cleared and cleaned with an ongoing maintenance schedule put in place. Extreme blockages in the Waimoku stream still exist to this day on private land. We believe this contributed to the extreme flooding at Candia Road. Each individual property should be assessed for the risk and severity of future flooding. Financial support should be given to homeowners to support them to make practical changes to reduce that risk. Where no practical intervention can reduce flood risk, we believe voluntary buyouts should be offered. We cannot wait any longer. The game has forever changed. Climate science and our own Westie lived experience tells us that such weather events will continue to be more brutal and more frequent. We must act swiftly and strategically to address the great city of Auckland's infrastructure and stormwater challenges to provide flood mitigation for the present and for the future, for those who will come after us. We implore you to act with bravery, to do what is right and what is needed. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you very much. A very unfortunately bleak situation, but passionate and what feels like pretty evidence-based focus on what we're doing. Council, 2 weeks after the floods, we've enacted a full look at everything you're speaking about right across Auckland. Obviously, you know how widespread it was. That work is ongoing and we're trying to get as much of it back as soon as possible. We're also in talks with government around things you're talking about that are unfortunately sort of far outside our budget availability, but we are hoping that we can respond quite quickly within the next few months to those sorts of questions from you. But just want to, I know that this table will be sending thoughts out to you and your families, but also your neighbours and friends. I personally can't imagine how difficult it is for you all at the moment. So thank you for coming here and showing a voice for them. I will allow these 3 questions as I said 2, but you spoke under time there, so I'll go to Councillor Sayers first.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Rodney, so the Rodney Ward. So thank you very much for your presentation. I endorse everything that you have said, and I think it goes beyond just bravery. It's common sense what you're talking about there. You'd think it'd be 101, it would be happening anyway. So thank you for your messaging there.
Yeah.
My question is around you mentioned about private landowners and perhaps some financial assistance for them. But I just want to give you the opportunity to elaborate on that in terms of, because we've also got compliance on the other side. We've got the stick in the carrot. So how that might work.
I think in our experience with private landowners, it's unfortunately it's more council owned streams, council responsibility streams and rivers and culverts that are potentially more of the issue. But there is an issue going forward, I think, around private landowners, especially around Candia Road, the Waimuku stream. We have seen that in private land that there is quite a blockage there that we believe is partly responsible for the flooding in Candia. So, yeah, I think it's a wider issue than just private land. I think it's, we need to look at both.
Do you feel that you covered enough with us around the council ones then? Because my question was twofold, what you thought about the private landowner as well as council. So is there anything else you want to add around the council responsibility?
I think what we are picking up through the comms that we're getting through, we're getting emails and from supporters and on our social media platforms, the overwhelming sense from our community is that there's radio silence from the council. Yeah, and that's our lived experience, is that even in our committee where we met on Monday, what's the council doing? That was the question that came around our table. And this is, this is committee members as well, and while we're not saying that that nothing is happening, I think the way in which council engages with flood affected residents in our city probably needs to have a bit of a look at and improvement. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. I think that's very helpful, Mr. Chair. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, if you don't mind, I want to just quickly acknowledge you and your group. I will ask a question, I promise. But, we're talking about people here, 200 people plus that have lost everything, gathering the energy to come together and actually advocate, and advocate really effectively, and that's really hard. And just I think we need to appreciate that for West Aucklanders, this stuff is traumatic. It's hard to actually talk about. So that you're able to sort of gather the strength as a group to do that. I think that's really nice. And finally, just acknowledge you in the stuff like rates relief that you advocated really strongly for as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, doing a fantastic job, and thanks for you to come in today. Look, do you think there are trust issues with council, central government, other entities, and how can we kind of encourage that open dialogue? What's the best way that we can do that effectively to kind of get over some of those barriers that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I think when comms go out around stream cleaning, for example, there needs to be, I believe there needs to be follow up to that, because there's an announcement, and around rates relief, there was an announcement around rates relief, and then there wasn't. Our people would come to us and say, so what's going on with rates relief? What's going on with stream cleaning? It's been 3 months. And so some way of engaging council members coming to our place, coming out west. West is best. We'll treat you right. Come on out. And just to engage in dialogue with our people, And I think for me personally, we didn't have flood our home. We didn't have floodwaters come into our home. We were really blessed in that way. I've got a young family. It's not an investment property. It's our home, and we've poured so much love and time into that. And every time it rains, we're out checking the streams. And our street, half our street is gone, you know, and they weren't just people that lived in those homes. They're our neighbours, they're our mates, they're our friends. They'd been with us in the tough times, they'd been with us in the good times and celebrated with us. And I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind, and I'm sure you will, that it's not bricks and mortar, it's people. It's neighbourhood, it's community.
And if I can, like, on that issue of trust, I think what's happening is you've got a community of people who are understandably very distressed and burnt out. And when people are burnt out and stressed, they want to find somewhere to lay their energy. And rightly or wrongly at the moment, the place people feel they need to put that is at the feet of the council. And my concern is that if that feeling isn't proactively addressed, we're currently looking at a fairly drawn out and engaged process of consultation with the government and with the council. And that process, if we're not really careful with how we manage it and proactive about how we manage it, I think it has some consequences that could be really negative for the community. So in terms of trust, that's an area that I'd really highlight.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I'll be quick, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Really great presentation. I didn't hear you talk about the conflict in council stuff, where they are contradictory. So in one moment we're told that there's SEAs all over these streams, they're significant ecological areas, and at the next minute, whenever I talk to people, we're being told that you can have an abatement notice for not cleaning the back of your stream. You know, do you think that clarity on this, you know, a stick in the mud from council, excuse the pun, with clarity on what you can and can't do, and you think that's important?
Speak first.
Yeah, I think what this has highlighted for us, where we are, is that, like Lyle mentioned, these streams are now public infrastructure. They're stormwater infrastructure, and some sort of piecemeal maintenance where some residents are responsible for private land, commercial land, public land is not really fit for purpose. The need is too great. And as a group, really what we are advocating, I guess, as a council may need intervention from the central government to do is a integrated management plan right across the waterways, because I think leaving it up to private landowners isn't working, and it's not going to work. And to continue on with that model, I think, is to stick your head in the sand, and then the problem will reoccur.
Because we wouldn't do it with roads. We wouldn't do it with roads. We wouldn't have, oh, well, this neighbour, this person is responsible for this stretch of road, we'll do this stretch of road, you do that stretch of road, oh, there's potholes here, you know.
Thank you. And last question, Mayor Brown.
I think the government secret service has been onto that one. I got the last bit of your impassioned speech, and I have come from lots of experience of communities who find themselves in your situation. Would your communities be opposed to a targeted rate that dealt with this? Because that's what the people
Sorry,
have caught.
I missed that question, sorry.
Yeah, someone there had a flood of the glass. Would your communities be opposed to a targeted rate to deal with this, which is what the solution was for Kaio and Kaitaia, where a targeted rate to fund the extensive clearing and remanaging of the streams was what was the way that, because you can't just, I know everyone wants to just blame the council, but that's everybody else. And people who live in areas which don't flood, not necessarily feeling quite so worried about this as you are. So a targeted rate is a solution which is available. I don't know how you guys feel about that. but it would strike me as a sensible thing to do. If I was in yours, I'd be quite happy to pay a targeted rate if it went towards clearing all the streams properly.
I think it's worth talking about. I think what would need to be acknowledged in our community, particularly the Swanson, Ranui, Henderson area, is that a lot of the people who are affected, we're talking about people who are on lower incomes, who are really feeling a cost of living pressure at the moment.
I accept that, but that's...
So, yes, so I just think that's worth mentioning in the context to keep in mind.
It covers all the people who benefit from it. It may not necessarily the ones who are immediately next door to a stream, but the people within a catchment who benefit from the improvement of that catchment are generally wrong. The rest of New Zealand pay for the improvement to that catchment. And so...
it's not something that we've talked directly with the community about, so we couldn't speak definitively on how they would feel.
Well,
certainly it seems to...
Bring up somebody in Kaio and Kaitaia. There's plenty of people up there that are short of money, and it's worked out quite well for them. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you both for presenting, and I know you've got all your community on your shoulders while you're here. I think you've given us more of the people side of the planning side and the infrastructure side that we are focused on. There is a lot of work going on, but I think you give a really good point that you need to see what is going on, even if it's at the moment too hard to maybe put out any final documents or any, when we're talking about private land and things like that. So, and our conversations with government are positive, but we still don't know where that sits at the moment. But you've given us a lot to drive forward the kind of pressure on that place. So thinking of you guys, and we know that we don't want to set you up for any kind of final decisions on things, but just so you know, there's a lot of work going on. We obviously need to communicate it better. So thank you both for coming.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Henderson and Turner, would you like to move and second this? All those in favour?
Oh, just on that, it seems a bit directionless. It's just thanking them. Normally we refer it to a part of the council for at least their consideration. Would it not go to Healthy Waters for their consideration?
We can do, but everything that was mentioned is being considered. But we can.
Look, it is normal for presentations that we refer it, not asking for a report, just to make sure they've got the information.
Yeah, we'll refer I guess the recording or the information to the recovery office. Yeah, that's fine. We'll get some words, but I think we can support the direction of that. All those in favour? Any opposed? No. Is the Aaron Martin here from the East Skate Club? Yes. No. I was still sorry. No. Right. Okay. We now have Forest and Bird. We've got. Who have we got on? Tom and Carl. I think online. Yep. Here we are. Right. We can see you both. I'm sure we'll. Once you speak, we'll see if we can hear you both. We just want to say hello.
Kia ora.
Right, kia ora.
I'm hoping I can share my screen if that's all right.
We've got your presentation here, if that's easier.
I
is that you sharing
whatever works.
Oh.
That might be me sharing it.
No, that is you. That's technology. Great, thank you. So you've got 5 minutes to present, and then we'll have a couple of questions straight after. Thank you both for being here.
Cool. Kia ora. I'm Tom. I'm the freshwater advocate at Forest and Bird based in Wellington. From Napier originally, and I'm joined by Carl, the Regional Conservation Manager for Forest and Bird in Auckland. I think Jeff Key, Strategic Advisor, might also be on the call. We've been talking to councils a lot and communities recently about nature-based solutions in response to impacts of climate change, but particularly in the context of Cyclone Gabriel. We've been talking about, in the early hours of 14th of February, as Cyclone Gabriel was smashing Te Tairāwhiti in the Hawke's Bay, the Tūtakuri River, and how that was flowing at over 1,800 cubic metres per second, or 1,800 tonnes of water was coming down that river past a single point every second. It took out the gauge. It was probably flowing higher than that, and by 8 a.m. it had taken out a substation, and by about 10 a.m. it was overtopping the stop banks and spilling into the suburbs nearby, including Taradao at the top of that image there, which is the suburb I grew up in, where my family still lives, in two houses about 600 metres from the river. They were lucky their houses didn't flood, but others in the region weren't so lucky. Even within their suburb, houses red stickered and yellow stickered, as I understand it, and obviously widespread destruction elsewhere. Estimates $1.155 billion worth of damage from the event. Federated Farmers estimates $1 billion worth of damage. I don't know if you can add those two things together or not, but that's also not then including things like stress and disruption of public income, public infrastructure damage, food shortage, all sorts of things, and of course lives lost during that event. Cyclone Gabriel was one of a whole bunch of recent storm events we've had. Obviously Auckland, which we've just been talking about, the most recent. Not long before that, Nelson. Numerous flooding events in Tairāwhiti and Canterbury before that, Edgecombe in 2017. After the event, NIWA Principal Climate Scientist Dr. Sam Dean said, "I have no doubt in my mind that climate change has influenced that event." Just, something you've just been talking about. And Met Service said these events will become more severe as the planet continues to warm. But it's not just climate change that's influencing the intensity of these events, it's also the way that we've managed the natural environment. We've done things like drain the wetlands across New Zealand. Aotearoa, we've lost 90% of our wetlands across the country. This is an image of Auckland showing the historic wetland extent on the left and the wetlands you have remaining. We've done the same thing to forests. Forests also, like wetlands, absorb rainfall and slow down water in the landscape. We've stripped the hillsides of a lot of our forest. And we've encroached on rivers and floodplains. We've done that in rural areas, like with the Hawke's Bay rivers, taken their channels and encroached on them with stop banks and willows and things. And in more urban areas, including places like Auckland, we have lined those streams with concrete and walls and greatly encroached on the space they have. Some river experts last year wrote a paper in which they said, "Working against nature does not work. We may inadvertently be manufacturing future disasters, and moving out of harm's way saves lives." That was 2022, but the same things were concluded after Cyclone Bola in 1988 by the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, who said extensive deforestation has led to greatly accelerated erosion, unwise intensive development behind stop banks has often been encouraged, and draining of wetlands has intensified flooding problems in many areas. Internationally, we know it doesn't have to be like this. We're slow to the play in New Zealand. This thing of encroaching on rivers and having big stop banks with concrete walls puts communities at risk behind those stop banks or next to those streams. We know that giving rivers more space means more space for habitat, lower floodwaters, communities at lower risk of flooding, they're safer, and more space for people for recreation and things as well. We're seeing this done internationally, but also in New Zealand. Greater Wellington Regional Council, off their own bat, has just bought all of these properties in the space, commercial and residential, and is jumping in with an NZTA project to widen the river here by 90 metres, giving that space back to the river, essentially making it green space. Some projects are happening in places like Auckland with things like, I think, the Stonefields development. This is, not developing in low-lying areas, having urban wetlands to absorb rainfall, and things like giving urban streams more space again, taking those streams like on the left that are lined with concrete and giving them more space to flood safely, putting habitat back into those streams. A whole bunch of studies have found that this is the way to do things. International studies show that allowing a river to self-adjust is cheaper and more effective than active interventions that force a river into a particular place. There might be a perception that you haven't got things that you can do already, that you're waiting for government, but you have policy and zoning tools. Greater Wellington Regional Council is striking through their policies which prioritise hard engineering and looking instead at green infrastructure and room for the river. You can think about how you do your annual planning with nature-based solutions, educating the public about flood zones, working with community groups doing these initiatives, reframing your flood management plans, doing climate hazard risk assessments, thinking about council-owned reserves as sponge cities and carbon sinks in stormwater basins. The PCE in 1988 said we're going to get more of these events. It may be that in retrospect, Bola will not be regarded as such an extreme event. I think we're all in that position now. We know that this is only going to get worse, and we can have these landscapes, including in urban environments, that have diverse landscapes and are mosaics that keep communities safer and are better for the environment. We'll leave it at that and take questions if you have any.
Kia ora, I think you just got a applause from the Mayor if you could not see him. But we all applaud you as well. Thank you for that presentation. And it is definitely some of the work we are doing already, but obviously needs to be at a far greater scale and faster. Right, we have a couple of questions. And first of all, Councillor Simpson, who did Councillor Simpson and I had a great meeting with Carl the other day, so thanks for that, Carl. Councillor Simpson, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Carl, for meeting us the other day. Look, you've sort of almost answered my question, but I really, in simple terms, how can we justify taking a more nature-based solution with regards to cost and benefit? You know, because the engineered solutions have been the go-to for so long, haven't they? You know, they're cheap, they do them, but cost benefit of the more natural-based solution?
Yeah, so the standard traditional, if you want to call it that, approach has been to jump in and try and engineer these things. Increasingly, the scientific consensus is that, you know, we're essentially trying to manage the unmanageable. It requires constant intervention to put walls in place, to replace rock revetments, to you know, clear streams and drains and things, which just naturally, you know, you walk through the bush, you see that a stream has rocks and trees and things in it. You're constantly paying for that upkeep, and then you're paying the cost of disaster, because when it fails catastrophically, and you don't know when that's going to happen or how that's going to happen. So in the long term, it's cheaper to actually just back off, to let things do their thing. There might be some places you do have to protect, you do have to continue doing that active intervention, but where you can, it is cheaper in the long term to step back. And it's really important that you look at that longer term rather than just the annual thing, because it appears really cheap to just put stop banks back or line rivers with willows. Then you get a big event like the Auckland floods or Cyclone Gabriel, and you see that billions of dollars worth of damage. You know, it would have been much cheaper to step back in the first place.
Great answer, thank you.
Very much agree with you there, Tom. Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Tom and Carl. And I heard Simon Upton on, I think, a month ago about the desirability of this green infrastructure in Auckland, and I know what Wellington have done, and that's great. In Wellington, we in Auckland, by comparison to Wellington, we have the issue with the price of land. Certainly, some legacy councils did used to do that. You know, North Shore City Council way back in the 60s, 70s, old borough councils, they did have that kind of green infrastructure because it wasn't worthwhile building on in many respects, and that's very beneficial now. So what would you advise Auckland? And I know you've just talked about the relativities of the investment involved. What would you advise Auckland to do in terms of that green infrastructure acquisition in light of the very high land prices? What would your advice be to us as a council?
Yeah, that's something we totally acknowledge. There is a really difficult situation with the, I guess, the economic situation we have and the cultural situation we have, which is private property rights and inflated land values make this kind of thing very difficult for councils that have historically had relatively low rates and then therefore, limited funds. Wellington is, as you say, Greater Wellington Regional Council, quite amazing in that they managed to step in, I think, over $100 million to acquire those properties. They decided that was worth the cost. Because the cost of a flood at that pinch point in the river was going to be over $1 billion, and something like 6 schools, 100 businesses, however many 100 houses. So for them, the cost benefit worked. There will be situations where the cost benefit probably would work for Auckland Council as well, especially when you look over that longer time period. But I think actively you should be looking to central government for both support in your flood protection infrastructure. So saying, look, we need to fund this in a different way and we want to do things differently. So please fund us to do things differently over a longer period. We might need to acquire some land. We need some managed retreat legislation probably and some guidance on how we can do that rather than managing retreat only after a catastrophic event, which then isn't managed retreat. And you might be having a conversation with central government saying, look, we can't continue to operate in this world of overinflated land prices and then catastrophic failure and then more and more pressure on council to do things because you're just in this vice where you can't do it. So you need some support, and I think you need to push government to help you, whether it's funding things more or whether it's dealing with that land acquisition problem. And that's, there's multiple solutions, but that's up for you to push government on.
Kia ora, good answer. Thank you, Tom. And very last question, Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Tom. And I guess building on the question that John Watson has just put to you, and thank you for the advocacy that you're bringing on this and also that of Carl. There's issues around the advocacy that we need to bring to central government because these have to be dealt with. Ultimately, nature's going to win. You know, we can't engineer our way out of it. We accept that. But how do you advise us to reconcile that tension that we're experiencing at the moment on pressure, where obviously for the issue of emissions and trying to get greater density in urban areas, but there's some areas where we've experienced intense flooding. So is there guidance you can give us in terms of managing carefully and thoughtfully through the intensification that we must do, but taking into account that some of the areas in the brownfields areas have actually been really challenging for us? So we're not wanting to delay the building of houses, but we also need to have a thoughtful response in light of all of the information that we've received. And the Chair and the Deputy Chair have written to the government, and we've had a year's reprieve based around on Plan Change 78, but that pressure is going to come on again, and the amount of work that's going to be required to be able to advance some of that is really going to be problematic. So I'd appreciate any thoughts and guidance that you can give us on how we manage those relationships.
Yeah, Carl might have a better answer than me on this, but I think one of the key things we need to look at, again, we're in that vice of big houses, big land areas, you know, and we need to be thinking more of building up, not out, and keeping footprints low, keeping concrete areas low, and basically acknowledging really water sensitive design principles. And you know, there's a whole bunch of terminology around it, but basically whatever goes in cannot increase the amount of runoff that we're getting. So looking forward, that really needs to be the priority rather than continuing to sprawl or put in more concrete or whatever it is. Carl, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, not really. I think it's just, yeah, it's awesome that the Minister has provided a year extension on that intensification plan change, and hopefully in that time central government can come up with some more tools to assist council in its intensification to sort of meet that balance that you've discussed.
Because I totally support those principles that you are advising us on. It's just how we implement them in really difficult areas. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And thank you both. And I'll move a vote of thanks. And Deputy Mayor would like to second. And all those in favour? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Awesome. Thank you both. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you both again in the coming time.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Now we're moving to